Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is America's largest small truck network with my friend Alex Winston. How's it going, Alex?
Doing well, Joe. Hope you are.
I sure am. So, Alex, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Yeah, I'm Alex Winston. My company is Expedite All, and I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. We are the largest small truck network in the United States.
Very nice. So you said Expedite All, but you guys don't do just expediting, right?
Yeah, we call it small truckload. So a lot of people think of it as expedite because usually it needs to go fast, but we do it scheduled as well. Whether you pick up now or later, we will do it for you. But because it's well known as expedite in the industry, that's how we got the name Expedite All. But we try to call it small truckload so that people get the idea of it's like a full truck, but in a smaller truck, sprinter vans and box trucks.
This is an emerging space. And the reason I say it that way is because everyone knows what truckload is. I 53 foot or 48 foot, and everyone knows what LTL is. But especially during COVID, we started noticing cracks where we had to expedite stuff. And I think a lot of people will say, oh, I don't want to expedite that, because expedite in their mind means I'm going to pay a fortune for that. But companies like yours have stepped into this breach and said there is times when it might be 2 or 3 pallets and I'm going to call it an expedite company, but I'm not going to have to pay the top dollar like I'm rushing it to the airport.
And I think early on when expedite first became a thing, people thought of it as a really high-end kind of service. And some of the names that you heard, like custom critical, sounded like it should be super expensive, right? But a lot of times the solution we provide is actually cheaper than what would have otherwise been provided, right? It is cost effective, even though it may sound expensive, expedite, but it's not necessarily an expensive solution compared to some other solutions that are out there.
Yeah, when I was still selling freight services, I remember working with a company and they said, we have an expedite division that will help you out. And I was like, no, I don't want to expedite it. And they're like, Joe, it's the same price as if we would do LTL for you. And because they also had an LTL division, I was like, huh? And I just had, because again, that was the model in my head, was expedite is premium priced for a reason. But they said there's all sorts of LTL, and they were doing LTL and expediting in the same vehicles. And that was the first time I saw that, but it's now pretty common, right?
It's become very common. I think it's the Amazon effect, right? In our home lives, we've gotten used to getting things on demand, right? Same day delivery or next day delivery. And I think as we've gotten more warehouses and more places, we're getting more used to on demand in the business world and in the freight world as well. And it's become very common to get things quickly and sometimes in smaller vehicles to make things move faster as well.
And you guys are non-asset, right?
We are non-asset. So we are a freight brokerage and we don't own any vehicles at all.
Yep. And you and I talked about this before we hit the record button. A decade ago, it felt, or 15 years ago, it felt like if you said, I don't have my own trucks, people were like, well, why would I work with you? Why do I need a middleman? I think as 3PLs and brokers and companies like yours have grown up, they've been the ones who invested in tech and customer success. And I think now shippers are much more likely to say, yeah, of course I'm working with them. But it's not just shippers. I know you work with, you guys are heavy on freight forwarders, brokers, 3PLs, that kind of customer base, right?
We do. We solve capacity problems for other brokerages and 3PLs and freight forwarders as well. And we service all kinds, right? And a lot of people come to us for that capacity. We solve problems that I think are hard to deal with, right? And so the fact that we have trucks available everywhere all the time, they're reliable, we're picking up on time, we're delivering on time, we're not having any of the issues that you hear about plaguing the freight industry in our pickups or deliveries or freight movements. We're solving difficult problems for all of those customers. And that's the reason they use what you call the middleman, right? Because it's a real pain in the butt to try to do it by yourself. And sometimes you can't, and sometimes you can, but it takes a really long time when you could have just sent an email and had it done.
Yeah, and I always say anybody who's a broker or 3PL, used to people go, "Oh, you're just a middleman. You're not just a middleman." But after a while, I would always say, "I'm a middleman, but I'm adding value in the middle. I'm getting it to you for less expensive than you would have paid. I'm bringing technology and a team to track everything." Yeah, you can call the middleman if you want, but the only way the middleman gets to stay in the middle is he adds a lot of value or he doesn't get to stay.
Yeah, and freight brokerages have been dealing with this as long as they have existed, right? What would you just say you do here? Is it like, why do we need you? And they are solving difficult problems, and they're doing it all the time, and they're doing it better and better all the time. If you go to some of these association meetings that freight brokers go to where they have exhibits of new technology, you'll see that the amount of stuff and visibility and network capacity and knowledge that they have at their fingertips at all times is really amazing. And so if you've got a good freight broker, they are certainly worth whatever it is you're paying them, probably, because they're solving really difficult problems and making sure things move on time.
Yep, we're seeing that my friend Kevin Hill over at Brush Pass Research tells me this, that there is a larger percentage of freight being brokered than ever before. And I thought it would be the opposite. I thought as technology made it easier to go around the middleman that we would. But what the brokers, 3PLs did, companies like yours, is they invested in technology and again, customer success, which we didn't ever say customer success 10 years ago. It was like, oh, we have customer service. And that was more or less to call someone when you were angry. But now we're looking and saying we have a process, we have a team. And to be fair, the asset-based carriers are investing in the most important technology, which is the wheels, right? And we need the middleman.
And the middleman has become more technology based to where it doesn't even seem like a man necessarily or a person. I talked to one shipper recently who they were telling me about their freight brokerage, but they didn't realize really it was a freight brokerage. They thought it was a technology platform, right? And they're telling me, yeah, this is who we use. It's a big one. You would have heard of them, right? And I said, oh, that's your freight broker. And they said, no, this is just a technology platform we use. Okay.
The world has changed very rapidly in this space. So, Alex, I want to get more detail about what you guys do and who you do it for. But first, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started Expedite All, and why did you start Expedite All?
Okay, so started in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's where I was born, raised, lived in the same house until I left for college. And when I left for college, I didn't go too far away. Went to the University of Tennessee here in Knoxville and graduated from the University of Tennessee. Went on to law school at the University of South Carolina, not too far down the road, about a 4-hour drive away. And then when I got done with law school, I got hired by a firm back in Knoxville intentionally. I always wanted to put my roots back down where I'd come from. And that firm had me doing M&A work, mergers and acquisitions. Essentially, my job was to buy and sell companies for private equity groups. And it was mostly software companies that I was helping them buy and sell. And when you're on the legal side of that, you're doing a lot of really, really long contracts and also what we call legal due diligence. So you're doing review of that target entity a lot of times from a legal standpoint. And so I spent several years just doing mostly being stuck in that world of M&A on the legal side. After I had done that for a few years, I got contacted by a portfolio company that I actually helped start for a private equity group. And they asked me to come in and be their general counsel. So I took that opportunity, became general counsel at a software company. They did property management software. It's a company called Inhabit. And fortunately, I was able to stay in Knoxville for that job as well. And then after I was there for a couple of years, an old friend of mine who had been a former client as well asked me to talk to him about his transportation business that he was working in. He was doing some consulting in transportation and had built a software platform and wasn't quite sure how to make it profitable. And largely what he was using it for was to help drivers and carriers in the expedite space And so I met with him a few years ago. We talked about what he was trying to do. We ended up spending basically a whole day together after having lunch together. And then after that conversation, he offered me to come on board with him. And then about 6 months later, after we planned how do we do this, we started Expedite All.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Now, I also know, I just looked at your LinkedIn before we hit the record button. You have a co-founder of an insurance company. And also another thing I want to talk to you about is this Reefer van network that you're part of. So please talk about both of those entities.
It's not that kind of reefer, Joe. But yeah, we'll start with insurance, and it's an insurance agency that I founded a few years ago. And it's just, we do a few things, but we call it Truckers National Insurance is a DBA of the main agency, which is Marble City Insurance. Marble City is one of the nicknames for Knoxville, which is my hometown that I love. And so I wanted to have a hometown insurance agency when I got into insurance. I am a licensed insurance producer as well. I don't sell any of the policies, but I do have that license. I have some experienced people who work for me who actually do the work. And the other thing we did was we started Truckers National Insurance. And one thing we do there is we try to make sure that the companies we work with have good insurance, right? And so it works hand in hand with our network of being able to offer that to them as well. That was the impetus behind it. I wanted to have a place where we put down roots here in Knoxville and then also be able to offer some products to the people that we know in the trucking industry.
Yep. So you have another company called Reefer.
Yeah, Reefer Van Network. So Reefer Van Network is similar concept to Expedite All. It's staffed by different people, but we wanted to do what we'd done in dry with Expedite All on the reefer side and really have it focused on temp control. So right now it's about 300 temp controlled vehicles that are small vehicles. Again, Sprinter vans and box trucks, some straight trucks all over the United States doing reefer expedite or reefer small truckload. And so it's this very similar concept and really wanted a separate entity that focused on the special needs of those companies that do that type of freight. Because when you're talking about food or pharma, you have specialized needs that you want people who focus full time on that, who understand what those needs are and can service those customers appropriately.
Yeah, the bar is higher when you're talking about food or pharma. And when you're talking about temperature controlled, one of the challenges is, like if I'm talking about less than truckload, I remember when still doing less than truckload, people would say, hey, can you move something? It needs to stay cold. When you're opening the doors and not less than truckload, I know there's some options there. They're few and far between, but also the idea that the doors get opened at multiple locations. If it's food, I have to be able to say that there's a chain of custody mindset that I have to have. I also, if it's a hot day, especially down south, but it gets hot up here in the summertime, and you say, I open that truckload door 10 times, how do I make sure that I've stayed the right temperature? And with pharma, it's the same thing, because you just have to be able to say, I can guarantee that nobody tampered with this, that this was not exposed to outside risks. And LTL and some of the other options for moving a pallet or two just made a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and one thing we've done at Reefer Van Network is we've made sure that we're monitoring the temp ourselves inside those cargo spaces, just so that we know if something goes out of range, we know right away. And so it's really important. You're talking about perishable things that someone is going to put in their body probably, and that can be a life or death kind of thing. It's important.
I told you earlier before we hit the record button that I knew of a major retailer that receives cold food to their location. And a lot of times it's just a pallet or two, but it comes in a 53-foot, 48-foot truck, because that's what's available in the reefer market. And that's a real problem because we talk, everyone knows empty miles is a bad thing, but what about 80% empty? That's pretty bad too. So we have to, as we start looking, how do we be more environmentally conscious here? Then we don't use the big truck for two pallets.
Yeah, and that's one of Expedite All's missions as well. So both on the dry side and on the reefer side, There was a movement a while back where everyone's saying, size your package. We don't want to ship air. We want to ship goods. And so everyone made sure that their package fit their goods perfectly and there's not space being shipped. We're just shipping goods, not air. But so we got the right size boxes figured out, I think a couple decades ago. And now what we forgot to do is think about the biggest box in supply chain, which is the 53-foot dry van. And so the biggest box has not had as much attention. And so one thing that we say in Expedite All is we're trying to right size your truck, not just your box. Get the right size truck on that load so you're shipping less air and burning less fuel, right, for that load as well.
Yep. And there is all sorts of freight in the world. And so we have the 53-foot truck, great, 48-foot, whatever, the full truckload. And then we have LTL. And in a lot of ways, for the last however long, decades, we force fit everything into one or the other. And now companies like Expedite All are popping up and saying, hey, we're an alternative if you have just a few pallets. And what we're generally doing in our space right now is moving product closer to consumers. So that is all sorts of mini fulfillment locations, right? And that means we're going to have more less than truckload shipments. So there is a big demand for that, but it's not all going to go less than truckload. When we look at the LTL market, it's 24, 25 companies that make up 90% of the volume. And they are not capable of doing every last load. And they are not particularly equipped well for your one or two pallets, especially if it's fragile. I've done the LTL thing a long time when people say, just make sure they don't stack on top of my stuff. And you go, I can't guarantee that we would always put those cardboard cones on top. And then if you ever tour the LTL facility, you see those cardboard cones are all flattened. And I'm not even, this is no shade to the LTL companies, what they do really well. But if you say, this is pharma, or if I say it needs to be a temperature controlled, or if I say this is fragile, not packaged quite the way it should be, then it's just not for LTL. And I bet, by the way, that I think a lot of them would say, gladly give it to Expedite All. I don't want freight that makes my life difficult in my network.
Yeah, and we have, LTL major LTL carriers whose brokerage divisions use us, right? In order to, if there's something that needs to move quicker or that just is not appropriate for what their main line of business is, they'll give it to us. And I think once you learn enough about transportation, you realize there's a time and place for all of these things, right? There's a time to use full truckloads. There's a time for LTL and there's a time for expedite. There's even a time for rail, air, all these things. And so the challenge for a lot of people, and manufacturers in particular, they didn't get into business to ship things. They got in business to sell goods. And there's a learning curve anytime you're growing as a manufacturer to understand what are all these solutions and when should I use which one? And that's where I think a really good freight broker comes in and says, here's what you do, right? And here's the best way to do it. And it allows a shipper, we call them shippers. They don't think of themselves as shippers, right? They could think of themselves as manufacturers. A manufacturer can really benefit from having an advisor like that who can make sure that everything gets done in the most efficient way.
Yep. And by the way, I think about the LTL companies when I used to do a lot of less than truckload shipping. At least a couple times a month, we would have to rescue a LTL shipment that we thought was going to get loaded onto the truck for delivery that day, but didn't. And so as soon as we realized it didn't get loaded for whatever reason, again, the LTL companies are fantastic, but being 99% on time doesn't help if the pallet you needed stayed in at the terminal. So we would rescue them with companies like expediting companies, and it's a valuable thing. So I like the idea of it not just having LTL and truckload, but we need a really strong middle ground, third party, whatever you want to call it, that does what you guys are doing. It's necessary. It makes our industry better. And again, I do think as we get more and more stuff shipped to our house, by the way, we're talking December 18th. I just ordered a ton of stuff to come to my house. That's how Santa works these days. So
I got a notice yesterday that Santa was delayed on something. And I've got a 7-year-old who's not going to be happy if Santa delays again. So cross your
Yeah,
fingers.
Dad's a logistics guy. He understands. So again, you have a company called Expedite All, and that's for, again, moving 1 or 2 pallets. Can you ever move? Is 3 pallets possible?
Yeah, so I'll give you just the rundown of kind of what we do, the nuts and bolts. And so we really go 0 to 14 pallets is what we say. But most of the stuff we do is more like 2 to 3 pallets, or 0 to 3 pallets is what we say, because some of the stuff isn't even palletized. It's floor loaded, or even like sometimes someone will just need to move an envelope and FedEx is closed, right? But yeah, so we have sprinter vans or cargo vans or transit vans is what Ford likes me to call them. But yeah, we have these cargo vans, and they will hold up to 3 pallets usually, and about 3,500 pounds on average. Okay. And that's what the cargo van range looks like. Box trucks on average are more like 4 to 6 pallets and up to 4,000 pounds. Some of those box trucks are built on the same chassis that the Sprinter vans are built on. So the actual load capacity is very similar.
What are some of the links on those box trucks?
It varies, but commonly about 14 feet. And when we distinguish between a box truck and a straight truck, and so some people just think of them all as box trucks because they're,
Oh, that's what I was doing.
yeah, they look like a box, right? Whatever. But when we talk about a straight truck, we're talking about a dock high truck. And usually it's 24 or 26 feet. And so we call that a straight truck because it's just like half a semi, really. And it has the functionality of a semi. It's probably more maneuverable. And then it's going to have that dock high need if you need a dock high truck. Nice thing about the straight trucks is a lot of times they'll have a lift gate as well, most of the time, which if you need lift gate, it's really helpful. And then, but straight trucks are the ones we say go up to 14 pallets, up to 10,000 pounds. And then when we talk about box trucks, it's usually 14, 16-foot box, and it's 4 to 6 pallets, 4,000 pounds, something like that. And so that's the 3 types of trucks in our network. It's a box truck, a straight truck, and a sprinter van. And most of what we have are the sprinter vans and the box trucks.
And you guys have nationwide footprint, right?
Nationwide footprint. So right now we have over 8,000 trucks in our network. And so if you went to any, not even major metro, any metro area at all, you're going to see probably dozens of our trucks available on demand. And Joe, I don't know where you're sitting today. I think you're in Michigan, right?
Yep. I'm on the fringes of the Detroit metro area near Ann Arbor.
Okay. Are you like Novi area? Is that where you're at? Or
About 20 minutes from there. Yep.
okay. All right. But regardless, if
Brighton area.
okay. So regardless, if you're in that Detroit metro area, if you told me your home address right now, Joe, I could do a few keystrokes on my computer and we could have a sprinter van outside your house in 15 minutes, probably.
See, that's a big deal. And I think because we have a lot of the traditional expediting companies, asset-based, have a region or a metro area that they manage. And that's fine, except the customers you're working with, which are often large brokerages, they are not used to they don't want to develop their own network of expediting. And by the way, when I say expediting, that's a shorthand for, could be volume LTL in a sense. It's just that I'll call it the third rail. Maybe rail's not appropriate here, but it's not a truck. It's not quite a truckload. We don't want it to go LTL, so it's a small truckload. And I think when I was still at a 3PL, we struggled with that because we had certain areas near our customers. We knew the companies that we could work with, but a lot of times there were mom and pop companies where you're like, oh, sorry, George is out driving today. Call back later. And that is fine. But I would rather have them be part of your network than me having to deal with that.
Yeah. And we have a lot of people like that. We have a ton of people who are one guy, one truck, right? The majority of our people are like one guy, one truck, or maybe even a husband, wife team driver, right? One truck. Or maybe one guy owns another truck that a friend or a family member drives, right? And so instead of you having to call the 10 people who have these small businesses, they're all collected in one place, right? And the nice thing about working with us is not only they're all collected in one place, but I know where all of them are all the time, right? And so I don't have to go check to see where they are. I already have a map, right, at my fingertips where I just say, hey, who's near Brighton right now? okay, this guy's 5 minutes from Joe's house. If Joe needs him, I'll just call him and he'll be there in 5 minutes, right?
I got the demo from you at CSCMP this year down in Nashville. And that was pretty slick because I know people can track, but once you get down to these vehicles, it's not the same as they don't have to have an ELD in these vehicles. They don't have, and a lot of these are smaller companies. They're saying, no, I don't want that. So you need somebody, this is going to be a VC word, but I'm going to say it anyway, that orchestration layer. But it's, in this case, it's true. It's somebody to manage the orchestra. And some companies if you're doing mostly truckload and mostly less than truckload and maybe some freight forwarding and all that other, and you say, I don't want to have to deal with it. You just partner up. This is the story that is so common on my podcast, is find a good partner to do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the people who work with us, they go from being in a position where they have to find these vehicles to where they just have them. They don't have to find them. They already have them. And wherever they need one, it's there, right? It is not an issue for them. If you get a bunch of these loads, it's not an issue to cover them all and cover them all quickly. Send me an email and we'll have 20 of them covered in 5 minutes. No problem, right?
Yep. So are you guys, are you considered a technology platform then?
Yeah, so we started as a technology platform, honestly, but we have a customer facing portal where you can go online and, like you said, you saw it, a little bit of it when you were in Nashville at CSCMP's event this year. But you can go online, you can see where the available trucks are in the United States. You can see details about those trucks, whether they might work for you, how close they are to your pickup location at any given time. And then you can oftentimes just book them instantly at a rate that's given by our calculator as well. We have given our customers the ability to go online, search for their lane, and book a truck at a guaranteed rate. You could probably do that in about 30 seconds if you wanted to.
Oh, so any zip code, I get a price automatically?
So you will get, for almost all of them, you will get a price. And we have an algorithm that does the rates. But part of our limitation is if we don't have more than 10 trucks within a certain radius that are available to carry your load, then we don't let you click book it now, right?
Right. That just to be fair, by the way, I prefer that as opposed to, I don't want to get a book it now price if there's no book it now trucks.
Right. And so, but what you'll find is any major metro and even a lot of the smaller metro areas in the United States, you're going to have that book it now functionality with a guaranteed rate. And so you in Detroit would have no problem anytime going on our network, going on our platform and having a truck within about 30 seconds, right?
Yep. And you also have people manning your platform. I know that because I got the demo. So if there is actual conversations or text message or emails that need to happen with your team, they happen.
Yeah, we use AI a little bit, but there are a lot of people required to get 8,000 trucks going where they need to be all the time. And so we do have really good professionals working for us who know this industry and know our drivers and work really well with them as well as with our customers. And anytime you're chatting with us online, whether it's in our portal or at our website, you're chatting with a real live human being who has a lot of experience in our industry. People sometimes ask me, is that a bot? And it's not a bot, it's a real person.
So you've built this network of 8,000 companies. How do you track them and how do you vet all those guys?
Yeah, the way we track them is through a cell phone app, right? And so we're going to make them turn location services on in that app so that we can see where they are all the time. And honestly, that we consider that not only part of the tracking and status part of what we do, we also consider that part of the vetting of what we do. Because a lot of times if you're a bad actor or you don't have the right intentions in mind, somebody tells you, I need to track your location at all times, you might stop talking to them. And so that actually is part of the vetting as well. We also do background checks, get motor vehicle records, and then make sure that we're monitoring performance at all times. We have training as well for every driver. So they're going to have to pass a training course and finish that course. And also, obviously, we're making sure insurance is up to date. And then we're as an additional insured on every single driver's insurance, so that if there's any lapse or cancellation or anything, we get notified. But yeah, that's the main things we do to vet. And honestly, I think the most important one has been being able to track their location. I think as soon as people realized we were going to do that, if they did not have good plans with what they were going to do with us, they decide they want to work with someone else.
I just did a podcast interview with Truck Stop, and one of the things they said is a lot of the bad actors out there right now, the freight fraud guys, the cyber security risks, use virtual phones. Lots of people use virtual phones. That's not a problem, but they're doing that so they can't be tracked to a location. And so it's nice if you can track somebody to a location and say, yeah, we know who these guys are.
Yep. And it's great to know where they are when we have freight available, to know where every single guy in our network is and whether they're loaded or looking for freight. It's key to what we do, right? And so not only is it part of our safety, it's also just part of our business to be able to know where they are all the time.
Yep. And I got to tell you, I've had this conversation before with people regarding the expediting. You can work with a company like yours, Expedite All, and I get one bill. So let's just say I'm working with you. We have a process in place. You do lots of work for me. You're working with a lot of brokers, 3PLs, freight forwarders. I know what I can expect from Alex and the Expedite All team. If you are working with thousands of mom and pop carriers, which again, I have no bias against them, but then I have to work a whole bunch of different processes, and they are not technology companies. You, in effect, are a technology company. This is the main part of your business. That is not the main part of their business, and it's a challenge. I told you before we hit record that I remember getting handwritten bills faxed to our office to pay, and then paper checks only. And again, no shame. But the idea that you ask a big 3PL or freight forwarder to do that, they're like, no. Get us a partner like Expedite All, who works the way we want them to work, and let them deal with all of the disparate systems that they need to work with.
Yeah, it's definitely convenient to have everything at your fingertips, one stop, instead of having to. I've heard horror stories about. Actually, I had a friend at a major brokerage in Cincinnati, won't be named, but he told me he used to haze the new guys by having them post a fake Sprinter van load on the DAT and take phone calls from people on that load. And so that was a hazing ritual for him when new guys came in. Oh, you think you know how to cover freight? Okay, post one of these and see what happens. And so literally the hazing ritual is to solve a problem that we solve for you, right?
Yep. No, I love it. I love it. Who's the sweet spot for you guys? Who do you work with the most? Who's the best customers for you guys?
The best customers for us are ones with lots of freight. So please, if you have lots of freight. But no, honestly, it's large logistics companies, 3PLs, brokerages, freight forwarders who are looking to have that capacity in a more efficient way than starting a department to deal with it and starting a department to build the same network that we've already spent 10 years building. And there are some of those 3PLs who we're their expedite department, right? So instead of having to do the legwork of vetting every single carrier that calls in on a load, a hot load that you posted on a load board, they just send it to us and know they're going to get a fair rate and good, reliable service out of it. It's a lot of top 1,000 brokerages who we're doing a lot of business with right now.
That makes sense because, again, they're focused on getting 100 truckloads in this lane that week. And maybe they're doing some less than truckload. Maybe they're used to optimizing those type of networks. And let's face it, they're doing a good job. That's why a larger percentage of the business is getting brokered. But when you take them off their game and say, hey, stop optimizing that network where you have 100 trucks in that lane every week and make a whole bunch of phone calls to smaller expediting companies. Or I know I don't want to just keep saying expediting because I know it implies it's premium, but I guess we call them couriers, final mile, middle mile. It's really, I think, the newest industry within our space, because I never looked at expediting a decade ago as yeah, we can use an expediting truck for less than truckload or for 14 pallets. Again, I think we all need to stick to our knitting. That's why every once in a while you hear somebody say, oh, we developed our own TMS, and other companies like, no, thanks. We'll let somebody who does the transportation management systems, we'll use theirs. We don't need to specialize in everything. We're going to double down on what we're good at and outsource the stuff that is painful for us.
Yeah, and I think part of, especially with things changing as fast as they do these days with technology, you have to be willing to partner with people and not try to do it all by yourself, right? Because if you're trying to do everything for everyone, you're probably wasting a lot of time and money, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. I can always say this is I was a general manager, COO for a little third-party logistics company. And the stuff that would trip us up was this type of load. That would be the one that people would be coming in my office and saying, we still haven't found anyone for blank. And then that was the one that inevitably I was getting text messages at nighttime saying it delivered or the guy didn't. And you're moving tons of less than truckload and tons of truckload. And then it's the few expedites that are the ones that are just because it's not in our wheelhouse.
Yeah, and we try to take the pain out of it as much as possible, right? So if you sent us a request, we would get it covered very quickly, first of all, but then you would get constant updates as well as live tracking, right? If you wanted to see at any time where that load is, you can pull it up on a map, right? And see where it is. But so we've been able to really, I think, take the headache out of it for most people who use us, where they feel like that one load that used to cause me so much stress, I just send it and it's done and I know it's going to be okay, right?
Assuming somebody's listening right now and they reach out and talk to you, by the way, I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, and the links you and your marketing team give me, I'll put those in the show notes. Say if somebody does reach out to you, how long to get set up to start working with you guys?
It can be very quick, right? And if you email us and say, hey, I just want to check out your portal, right? We can send you credentials to get logged in. And honestly, you can click through and sign an agreement within the portal if you want to, without having to do any kind of formal back and forth of signing contracts with us. Most people don't do it that way. Most people, we have an agreement that they set up packet that they fill out and they get set up that way. Usually we feel each other out for a little while first, but because you can't be too careful in this industry on either side. Anytime someone wants to work with me right away, I'm suspicious of them, right? Like, I want to give you freight. And I'm like, is it drugs?
I used to say that people who are really desperate to work with us, I was like, is there some other 3PL not getting paid right now who stopped moving their freight? And now the guy who's been bugging him on the phone for the last month is all of a sudden very attractive.
Yes, but we can do the credit check fast and get everything done fast and pick up quickly for you if we have a good feeling about you, right? But we have had people, because we are so available online, work a target, right? If you want to move some illicit substance and not risk getting caught by the police in transit, right? Find somebody online to do it for you, right? And we do have to vet the people who come to us wanting to work with us pretty closely. And especially if they're in a big hurry, right? You're getting vetted even harder if you're in a big hurry. So it's not instant, but we can be really quick about it. We have plenty of staff on board and on the accounting side to get you set up.
Now, do they connect through your portal, or for your bigger customers, do they actually connect through APIs or EDI?
So it's all of the above, right? So we have some API connections. We have people who use the portal. We have EDI, and then we also just have people who do it what's now the old-fashioned way, email. Email used to be the new thing. Now it's the old-fashioned way. But we do have a lot of people who just send emails as well, because that's just the way they feel comfortable doing it. But more and more people are using the technology interfaces, whether it be the platform or some sort of API. That's becoming more and more popular. And I think someday it'll be robots talking to robots, to be honest with you, Joe. It's not
right. This is a little bit of the problem, though, is we always talk about relationships. And when we brought in the APIs, we're like, nobody's going to argue that APIs are bad. It's great if I can connect digitally, but that has also enabled the bad guys to get involved with us. And so we have to build in some checks. And so I always say, you're never get defrauded by the guy you talk on the phone to for the last 5 years. It's the guy who doesn't have a website and only wants to text with you. That's the guy who's going to rip you off. So anyway, I am going to summarize the best I can, then I will get your final thoughts on the topic. So I'm talking to my friend Alex Winston. He's one of the founders of America's largest small truck network, which is Expedite All, but also the founder or co-founder of RVN, which is the Reefer van network, which is, again, smaller vehicles, but it's temperature controlled, a big need for that right now. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that the less than truckload space has, which is how do we manage that kind of freight? And I just don't think it's a good fit. I think it's much better to go through RVN. But anyway, we talked about your business, which is working mostly with logistics providers, whether they be freight forwarders, 3PLs, brokers. That's the majority of your business. I think that makes sense also. Anytime a shipper goes directly to you, I'm sure you take their business, but you probably think, who is your broker? Who is your normal guy that you're working with? Because you want to make sure it's not one of your partners.
Yeah. And anytime that I work with another transportation company, one of the things I assure them, both actually and contractually, is that we're never going to go after your business. And I have no intention to. So I don't sell to those folks. But yeah, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I need you to move something, I'll figure out how to move it for them. But that's not really my target market, right?
You're trying to avoid stepping on toes. But that's probably very reassuring for the partners you're working with. But you guys provide on-demand availability worldwide, or what? Nationwide. Well, worldwide's next time we talk. But that's nationwide is nice because, again, a lot of the expediting companies, if you're asset-based, you probably don't have a national network. That's just the nature of how things work. And you guys have an actual tech platform, and I can, for the most part, get a book now, an automated price. That's only if you can actually deliver on the automated price. I don't want to get, hey, here's your book now price. We can't actually do it. Yeah, I don't need that. I do having a tech platform. And again, this is a venture capital word, but I do like it in this case. This is truly an orchestration layer because otherwise you have to work with a whole bunch of companies because you are stitching together your own network, which is fine if you want to do it, but it is a big enough job that Alex and his partner started their own company. Again, I think it makes more sense to partner with a company than to do this because it's a different animal. The type of vehicles, the type of companies are very different than LTL or truckload. And I do also think that we're seeing more and more non-expedited freight in this type of vehicle. Makes sense. And last but not least, I do think this is very much an LTL alternative. We learned during COVID that LTL, super important. It's a very useful thing. Not every country has a great LTL networks like we do, but they aren't perfect for everything. And again, there's anybody who shipped LTL on a regular basis knows that reefer loads can be a little tough. Stuff that can't be stacked is rough. 2 pallets that are in a rush. There's a lot of stuff that just doesn't fit into that network. Anyway, put a big old bow on this one. Alex, final thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, we're doing exactly what you just mentioned, which is filling a kind of a hole where if you have freight that isn't quite right for LTL, it's not going to fill up a truck, but maybe it needs to move fast. Maybe it's delicate. Maybe it's oddly shaped, or for whatever reason, LTL doesn't make sense. We're filling that space in the market in a really efficient way by bringing 8,000 plus trucks at your fingertips on a platform available instantly for booking, right? And chances are, no matter where you are, some of them are near your pickup location at any given time, right? So that allows us to do very little deadhead on the way to the pickup, get you a better price, and get you picked up and delivered as quickly as possible as well. So we're proud to bring the freight world America's largest truck network, Expedite All, and certainly glad, Joe, and thankful to you that I ran into you at Edge and that got to connect with you and able to do this podcast with you. It's a really great thing you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, we also should mention, I will put a link to RVN, which is the Reefer van network for your temperature control. But when we say temperature control, it's some of it frozen.
Yeah, so it goes from all the way from -20 to 80. So some of it's cold, some of it's Arctic, some of it's room temperature, keep from freeze, and everything in between. So there are certain products that move at 50 to 55 degrees, and we can do that as well, right?
That is also such a need. Again, I know all these fast food restaurants, a lot of them are getting truckload shipments that have a pallet or two, and it makes no sense. And as we all start to look to say, how do we save money? You book the right truck for the job. And also, anytime we're looking at, there's not a lot of alternatives. You say, I want a reefer. A lot of times the reefer is 48 feet long, and that's it. Availability is not there. So I love that this is a developing network. Anyway, Alex, again, I will put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, and it links you and your marketing team give me. And it is December 18th. So I will wish you a very Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah or whatever you're celebrating this time of year. Enjoy it.
Merry Christmas, Joe. Thank you.
Yep. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.